Well, this week, the Senate passed the Marketplace Fairness Act, which requires online retailers with more than $1 million in annual revenue to collect sales taxes on transactions across state lines. The bill now faces the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, which could put up a tougher fight on this bill. One Republican congressman from Arkansas is leading the push to pass the House bill. His argument is that tax-free online retailers have a leg up on local retailers who are forced to charge those sales taxes. Well, Congressman Steve Womack is joining me now, a top author and sponsor of this bill. And Congressman, let me just play for you again what House Speaker John Boehner said to our chief Washington correspondent Peter Cook, in which he opposed this bill.
I just think that moving this bill where you've got 50 different sales tax codes, it's a mess out there. And what you're doing is you're going to make it much more difficult for online retailers to be able to comply with it.
So he argues that this is going to put an administrative burden on small businesses. What's your response?
Well, first, I would have preferred the Speaker would have stuck to giving fashion advice. But that said, I have a great deal of respect for the Speaker, and it's not the first time that I've heard the argument that it's too complicated. But there are provisions in the bill, if you read the bill, that dictate that the states, if they choose to go this route, have to provide this software free of charge and update it regularly so that it's not a hardship on the online startups and online businesses. Also, it has $1 million threshold for gross sales. It doesn't even affect you unless you're doing at least $1 million. So I think there are some provisions in there. But look, I've heard the argument before, and it's a common theme that it's too complicated and there are too many tax codes. If that's a problem, I'm a big fan of regular order. Let's give it to committee and let's solve the problem. You know, what's interesting about this whole discussion is that nobody has failed to acknowledge that we do have a problem. Everybody recognizes that the playing field is not balanced.
Right.
So what we need to do is try to fix that problem.
Congressman, some of the other opponents you know very well, and you've heard those arguments, as you said, is John Donahoe, the CEO of eBay, who he says this won't directly affect him, but it affects all those companies that do sell on his website. And he said at a recent conference, he said, quote, "We believe the tax burden that's going to be put on the smallest businesses is going to disadvantage them. Larger sellers will benefit at the cost of smaller sellers." Let me break apart two of those pieces, though. Number one, Congressman, John Donahoe is saying, why not raise that threshold of companies that would have to comply with this bill to $10 million in sales and companies with less than 50 employees? Would that be a change that you'd be willing to make?
I'm a fan of regular order, and if that's what the Judiciary Committee would prefer to do to make this more palatable to its members, then we would have to take a look at that. And then we would be able to put the two bills together in a conference committee and work out our differences. Look, I agree that we need to be very protective of small businesses. So where is the argument that we need to be protective of the small businesses who are the traditional retailers? You know, I know the big boxes are involved in this, and I represent one in my district, Walmart, but I'm also concerned about the Bedford Cameras of Northwest Arkansas, the Underwood Jewelers in Fayetteville, the Peters Family Livings at Russellville. These small businesses are operating under a very difficult hardship because they're having to charge a sales tax for the same merchandise that somebody can go online and buy, sometimes in their presence on the floor of their store, and save that sales tax. So it's a problem. It needs to be fixed. It may not be pleasant, but I'm a fan of regular order, and I'm anxious to see the Judiciary Committee take this up and take it through the process.
Well, and some would say, though, Congressman, that you're a supporter of this bill because you are in Walmart country, and this is going to be a bill, as John Donahoe and others would say, that is going to benefit companies like Walmart and Amazon.
Well, look, I can't help the fact that I'm from Northwest Arkansas and Walmart happens to be headquartered there. Look, I think a lot of these big box stores are going to be just fine. Some may not. Some of the appliance types may not. But I do think that the business model that Walmart has, it's involved in a lot of other things that are not even related to some of the online sales tax issues. Yeah. It is important to Walmart, but Walmart's going to survive. But as I said, a lot of the small businesses that have been the backbone of retailing around our country, in small towns and large, throughout America, are really hard-shipped by this anything but level playing field.
Congressman, how much support do you have right now for this bill in the House?
Well, it's got several co-sponsors, bipartisan co-sponsors, and obviously it had a lot of support in the Senate with a 69 vote total in favor of it when it passed a couple of days ago. But again, it's hard to measure right now. We haven't whipped it. I've had feedback from not only my constituents, but constituents around the country. I've had feedback from other members. We'll just see what the regular order process does when it goes through judiciary.
Congressman, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Congressman.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Congressman Steve Womack, a House sponsor and author of the Marketplace Fairness Act. And when we return, a dramatic new demand from Apple and its patent showdown with Samsung. Details on that in a moment. And talk about retail. We're going to take you inside Kate Spade's business to find out how the company has rebounded so dramatically. Its CEO will join us in just a few moments.